We do talk about suicide in this episode, which we know can be distressing. So if you need resources or support, please go to or contact your nearest crisis center.
Hello, I am Aisha
And Paula, your cultural hybrid mental health therapist,
here to explore unfiltered and heartfelt conversations on core issues
that affect us as human beings. Get ready for honest, captivating,
and real stories that take you on a journey to navigate your life
in the best possible way.
So grab a seat
And stay with us on this episode of Do We Have Your Attention? Welcome to another episode of Do We Have Your Attention podcast. My name is Paula and my co-host is...
the one and only Aisha.
Woo, woo, woo!
Hey. And today we're talking about frequently asked questions related to mental health and the importance of therapy.
Okay. But before we start, you know the drill. We need to do our feelings check-in. So bring your colors out. Hopefully we all get accustomed to what our colors are in, let's see, a couple episodes in. We should all be accustomed to our colors now. But how are you feeling today, Aisha?
At this point. So I think like 5 minutes before, maybe like 10, I was feeling like gray, a little bit anxious. Like something happened and I was just like panicking in relation to this recording. So I was like, oh my God. But now I think I'm like in the green and the yellow. I feel positive, calm, relaxed, like just ready to go.
Cue in the
What about
music.
you, Paula?
It's like cue in the music.
I know. Relax.
I would definitely say I'm feeling a little bit of orange again today, feeling innovative, feeling confident, excited for the conversation. So a little bit of yellow, also a little bit of nervousness. So I'm like a couple yellow, orange, gray today. Let's put it that way.
Okay. You know, we have some that we can relate to. And so hopefully we can stick to the yellow and green today as we're recording.
Yeah, because we have some interesting conversations, and we checked online and we found 3 frequently asked questions related to mental health and therapy. Topics related to therapy, topics related to mental health.
Let's do mental health.
Okay, first question coming up. Okay, this is actually a question for you. How do you take care of yourself as mental health therapists? So actually a question for us. Let's put it that way.
Okay. One thing everybody should know, first of all, is as professionals, we are required to have supervision. Like you cannot be a therapist without supervision. Supervision meaning you basically talk with other professionals like you that kind of help you navigate like difficult cases or just like if you need to rub your head around with somebody to kind of help you figure out like a specific client or like a specific case, because we don't have the answers 100%. And you know, it can be hard sometimes working with the client. And I think most times, like I'll speak for myself personally, I struggle with cases where I want to go above and beyond for the client, and maybe the client is not ready to, or like the resources are not available to help them. And so it's always helpful for me to talk to like my supervisor or even Paula, or like my other friends that are in the mental health field, to kind of help me figure out like what would be best for the client, because that's what we're always thinking about. What's best for the client? It's not about me. It's not about the workplace. It's always about the client and their well-being. So, and I think we said last episode how much we have to engage in self-care. And that's one of the things that I know, you know, when we talk about self-care, we talk about like people want it to be very like specific things, but I kind of take the approach of implementing it in my everyday, like my structure and my routine kind of helps me have, it makes me make sure that I'm taking care of myself every day, you know, and that may look like making sure that I go to the gym or like I don't go to the gym or, you know, my schedule is kind of strict. You know, my friends think I'm crazy, but I go to bed at 6 p.m. I know. Well, I go to bed at like 6 p.m. and I wake up at like 4:45, which is...
Wow, that is impressive.
Crazy for an adult, but these are things that I don't joke with because it really helps me take care of my mental health. Like this is what I know I need. And I know, Paula, last time you were telling us about how, you know, you implement your baths or your Tuesday
my
baths.
Epsom salt Tuesdays.
So
Epsom salt Tuesdays. I'm so proud.
I'm very proud of you too. I'm like, maybe I need to start taking more baths with the salts.
I'll tell you this. I love Epsom salt. It's natural magnesium, and it's apparently, and do not quote me on this, apparently it's the fastest way to get magnesium into your body. And of course, it's like a natural muscle relaxant. So every time I leave the bath, I'm just like, I don't want no stress, no worries. So absolutely. But I want to hop on your what you said and ask you this. I don't necessarily know if people know what the day in the life of a mental health therapist looks like. So when you're sort of talking about, okay, when we're answering the question of how do you take care of yourself, people don't necessarily have a picture unless you're a mental health professional or at least you work in the field. A lot of people don't necessarily know what the day in the life of a mental health professional is like. So if you were to give us, I guess you could say a glimpse of what that looks like. Now we know it's like strict. You're very structured. What else do you think falls into that category as well?
Girl, you barely have any breaks. Let me just say this, right? From my experience now, because this may look different for other mental health professionals, my experience is back to back to back clients. And I mean, I get to work at 8:30. My first client is at 9. The last one, at least my current job is a little better, but my old job is like 6 p.m. And my last session will end at like 6 or 7. So imagine seeing somebody or seeing various people between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. It's crazy. And sometimes I wouldn't have the time for break because unfortunately 12 p.m., which is the typical break time, is when people are most available. So sometimes it may look like I have to sacrifice my break depending on the client and what they're presenting with to kind of see them and help them navigate whatever they're presenting with for the day. Yeah. So for me, because the routine at work is so rigid, I need to go to bed early and I need to have my dinner early because I love like working out and I love going to the gym and I have to prioritize that. And I don't feel like I want to do that after I finish seeing people from 9 to right now 4 p.m. I'm not going to go to the gym at 4 p.m. after I see my clients. Yeah, it's just not, I'm too tired. Like I just want to come home, eat and go to bed. So I like to like get that done in the morning, which is why, you know, I wake up 4:45. The gym opens at 5:30. I'm there at 5:30, workout 5:30 to 6:30, make my breakfast, blah, 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 relax, read a book. I don't know. Do whatever I need to do and get to work. Because that way, that time in the morning and that time at the end of the day is for me. Now, that may look like sometimes, you know, using that time to connect with my friends, my family, but I'm very, very strict. And my friends know it. They really are like, I can't believe you're going to bed. I'm like, I am.
Once I don't even hear, I already know now, like if I text you maybe around like 8 or 7, and I just know, like, just wait till tomorrow morning before you hear back from Aisha.
And I'm sorry, because that tomorrow morning, it wouldn't even be when I wake up. It would be like right before I get to work. Because I still need that time for myself in the morning where I'm going to work out and like just taking time for myself, making my breakfast and everything. So, but for a typical therapist, everyone's schedule is different. But for me, especially in the setting that I work and the demands that we have, we see people back to back to back to back to back.
Right. No, and I agree with you on everyone's schedule is very different. because there's early morning, during the day therapists. There is therapists who start midday to the evening times. There's therapists who are weekend therapists. There's therapists who are full-time. There's therapists who are part-time. I would say that my schedule is definitely a lot more flexible. I like breathing room. I function well. I function well. I call it like structured flexibility. I don't even know.
It makes sense. I see the vision there.
Structured flexibilities in the sense where I think I also mentioned in the previous episode that I really study my habits and I study my behaviors. And one of the reasons why I have seen that something that works well for me, being someone who's neurodivergent, it actually helps me understand
Paula. Pause. You got to tell us what neurodivergence means because not everybody understands that, girl. You're throwing in therapy words.
Is this really therapy words? I feel as though now social media, yes, it is, fair enough. It is in the sense where it's something that we talk about in a clinical setting. But then I feel as though with social media nowadays, people now, yes, there's a buzzword aspect of bringing things like neurodivergence, ADHD. And I know there's a couple other ones that we're going to leave for other episodes that people typically bring up. But I like the fact that at least nowadays people are understanding that there's different ways in which people's brains operate. So you can say it's called a difference. So when I just really say difference, it's when, unfortunately, some people are a lot more neurotypical in the way they function, meaning for them, the way they function in terms of processing information, socialization, emotional regulation is very different from folks who might be neurodivergent. So a lot of clinical diagnosis under neurodivergency, for example, would probably be things like autism.
Yep.
A lot of people, I'm sure, are aware of it. ADHD is another one too as well. I think Asperger's, but I also know that we're a little bit in the DSM-5 when it comes to Asperger's, where we're like riding the fence, so to speak.
The DSM needs an update.
Asperger's would be there. Tourette's would be there. There's a couple other ones, but of course, like the common ones, I think dyslexia too. So the common ones would be things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia as well. But it really is, I call it difference, but not difference necessarily in a discriminatory way. It's just your brain functioning, processing information in a way where it's unique to yourself. So whether it's through your behaviors, through the way in which you navigate your emotions as well, or process or socialize, it's just very different.
Yeah.
We would most likely have, I don't want to go too much into detail about it to stay on topic, which is one of the issues that I have.
This is evidence.
Which is one of the issues I have, but we would definitely, I think we would definitely have a topic that is just dedicated to neurodivergence, so we can really dive into what it is. But yes, being someone who is neurodivergent, it's so important for me to know what works well for me. So I have a structured, flexible schedule. I see people, I do evening days, I have very early days, and then even more evening days, just where you work into maybe 6:37 at night. And it's funny because for you also figured out what works for you, right? As a therapist, you're like, I need to go to the gym early in the morning. Now, prior to, I guess you could say maybe before the pandemic, I was wake up in the morning, go to the gym, wake up in the morning, go to the gym. Now I see how much the exercising and working out helps me clear my mind from the day that I've had. So if I've seen 7 to 8 people in a day, as soon like the idea of just going on the treadmill or going cycling or like strength training, it gives me so much excitement. Like, yes, this is my own time for my own self-care.
For you,
Let me just remove everything that's happened today. And as soon as I do that, I then transition into just a very Epsom salt Tuesday mode.
We're back to the salt.
I transform into it where I'm just like, now I'm like, yes, I don't want to be bothered. I want to eat good food. I want to watch TV, just very mindless activity. That's something that works for me. But I don't sleep at 6 p.m. I respect the fact that you do. I think that it's helpful. But yeah, I honestly think as therapists, it is so necessary for us to take care of ourselves because we're really carrying, I don't want to necessarily say, yeah, we are carrying, or let's put it this way, we're making space for people's traumas, generational habits, for people's challenges, worries, whether depression, anxiety, just varied mental health challenges that bring them to therapy, or just even life transition challenges that they're dealing with, and being someone who is holding space for people. I think if you're someone who just naturally does that in your life, you probably would know how difficult and how exhausting that can be sometimes.
I agree.
For people who are mental health therapists, you need that self-care.
I think it's just, sorry, I was trying to say something. Sorry if it felt like I was cutting you off, but I was going to say, like, it's so funny how these are two mental health therapists with two different ways of like dealing with their days. Like, I just want to go to bed, sit in silence, eat my food and go to bed. And you're like, I want to go to the gym and work this out.
Yes.
You know, it's just,
it's like, you know, when you maybe feel like the exercising sort of stimulates me and I need to be stimulated. So it's one of those things where it actually helps me a lot.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I need that energy in the morning and you need it at nighttime. So,
yep. All right. What other questions would you like for us to talk about?
So I guess it would be important to talk about how our journeys led us to discovering and understanding mental health. Okay. So I would like you to share what that journey looked like for you to get you to where you are right now, and what that process has looked like, and what that... I know that's kind of a deep question.
In discovering mental health, that's a very deep one.
And understanding. Discovering and understanding.
And understanding. Okay, I'll just share this story, and I'm pretty sure Aisha has heard this numerous times.
It's okay. It's not for me, it's for the listeners.
So obviously we know that mental health, like every reason where everyone has what's it called, physical health, everybody has mental health. But because we live in a world where there is unfortunately a lot of stigmatization and lack of awareness and education around what really mental health is, you might just say, oh, how's your mental health? Or maybe you need to check your mental health. There's nothing wrong with me. What do you mean by that? Like, you could have such strong adverse reactions when you bring things up. And especially being someone, obviously, who grew up in Nigeria, it makes it even more just very dominant and very prevalent that there is a lot of those just misconceptions and understanding. Exactly. I remember when I was in university, we call it university, yes. So let's
college for the American listeners.
Okay, fine. So let's say I remember when I was in university /college. And there's this library that I used to go to. And there's this guy who was Nigerian that was studying his master's in like engineering. So we sort of like, oh, you study here, I study here. Let's have a conversation. We're both from the same country, right? So we're having a conversation. He's like, oh, what are you studying? And I say, I'm studying psychology. He was like, he had such a very strong reaction. I was like laughing at me. I'm like, what is funny about that? He said, like, really? Like, what is psychology? What is mental health? Like, what is this? Like, it is all. So basically just they're having this, I would call, trying to find a nice way to say, unproductive debates. There's always an unproductive debate with me where he started saying he believes that people just make up excuses for their behaviors and there's nothing like mental health, and it's like we're all just playing victim, basically.
Wow.
So I got so heated with him.
I'm sure you were.
I got so heated and got so passionate. You know me, like when I'm quiet a lot of times. People don't know this. But if it's something that is obviously I'm passionate about or stimulates me, that's when I talk, and we're going back and forth. And I just, ever since that day, I kid you not, like I didn't really sleep for almost 2 weeks. It was like on and off. Like something was just like burning inside of me. Now, maybe I understand.
The girl was heated. She was heated. How dare him?
Something was burning inside of me. And I was like, no, people are going to understand what mental health is. And I think because I had my own trajectory, knowing that something didn't just feel right for me emotionally and mentally. And sometimes when we say something didn't feel right, you can easily say the same thing physically, where if you have a tummy ache or you have a headache, you're like, something doesn't feel right. Do I need to sleep? Do I need to rest? What do I need to do? So I eventually just said, you know what? I'm going to really almost like treat myself as my first client. Let me put it that way. Like, let me go and really educate myself. Let me really go gain awareness. Let me challenge my own biases as well. I'm just prejudiced beliefs that, unfortunately, culturally speaking, were innate for me in understanding just myself and my mental health. And that's sort of how I was able to quickly navigate what that looked like for me, so to speak. So long story long, that's kind of where I arrived to. How about you?
I think, wait, did I not answer this question at the last episode? But I guess maybe not, because this is discovering and understanding mental health.
That was more like career, passion.
Path, yeah.
But we're talking about your own mental health.
I think mine is a little bit sad, though. I don't want to... Well, I'll just say, because we're being honest.
It's a safe space.
To be fair. Well, thank you for giving me the safe space. But I would say like a typical Nigerian, how old was I? Maybe 16 or 17 when I first went to university/college. I was really young. So honestly, thinking about my introduction to psychology was like, I just stumbled on it like during A-levels class. I don't know, I had a free period and the teacher was teaching and I was like, I might as well like stay with my friends and like play with them or whatever during class. So can you see how serious I was? But the teacher was talking about attachment styles. And I just realized that as I was sitting in that class, I was so focused on him talking about the different attachment styles. And I was like, this man is reading me to filth when he was describing one of the styles, which we'll get to at some point. And I was like, wow. I was very intrigued, but still, like, it was just one of those things. It's like, okay, I guess I'll take a psychology class and call it a day. And now I'm interested in psychology. But in discovering and understanding mental health was when I was in college/university and I had a situation with the school that it really impacted my mental health. Like I was very depressed. I was suicidal. And I didn't understand it. Like to me, it was just I guess this is it. I'm just going to die and call it a day. But once I was introduced to a professional at the school, I was like, oh, she's explaining these things to me. Like the way you're like just describing it, like it's normal to feel this way when things like this happen, right? But nobody ever like sat me down or I never really was able to kind of understand like these things do happen. Like you hear stories, but nobody really explains it like in depth, like what people are experiencing. And she was able to break it down to me and just told me like, this is normal, like your mental health clearly has been overwhelmed because of this blah, blah, blah situation. And I guess that was like my first introduction to it. And I was like, wait, I kind of want to understand this more. Like I want to, like the way she was explaining it to me, and like helping me cope with what I was going through, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do to like help somebody in a similar situation. So I think, unfortunately, I was introduced to it in a situation where I was going through it in a very, 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 severe way, but I was able to overcome it and understand it. So it's a win-win situation. And I think part of one of the things that we try to do in our field is start with the preventative knowledge, like making people understand, like just like your physical health, or you go to a doctor, you check, like Paula was saying, you have a stomach pain. If you all of a sudden wake up one day and start having negative thoughts, like you need to check that, because you've never really experienced that before, or you've experienced that in a way that you could navigate it and change the thoughts. But now all of a sudden you are like consistently having negative thoughts. Yeah. You need to speak to a therapist or a professional, right? And I wish like that was incorporated in our curriculum as children. I'm just saying, schools, if you're not doing that now,
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I just want to thank you for your vulnerability and sharing. It's never an easy thing to talk about anything in related to our mental health in general, let alone suicidal ideation. So I appreciate you for sharing this. And I know already that a lot of people can and will relate to this, whether they are aware of it, not aware of it, yet to be aware of it. So it's nice to be able to have you speak, not just as a professional, but a professional who's also gone through similar issues that a lot of us unfortunately experience too as well. So thank you for that. I'm so curious, where do you think we should take the conversation, like this last part of our conversation? Do you want to go? We've done one therapy related question, one mental health related question. Where is the spirit leading you? Where's it guiding you, Aisha?
Spirit lead me. God, I'm the most indecisive person ever. This is one of my problems. But I think spirit is leading me because we were kind of talking about, the impact of culture, right? So I think we should touch a little bit about how we've observed cultural differences in our work, or just like when we first started this career path, or like just started being interested in what the cultural differences look like for us. And I think you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about like the stigma.
Yeah. I think that cultural difference aspect, as much as we would like to admit that it doesn't exist, and I'm not when I say me, I just mean some people, not myself, but like to admit
it exists too.
There's a lot of cultural differences in how mental health is perceived and approached. And if one of that would be even what the guy said too as well, where he said, I do not believe that people make excuses for their behavior. And I had a recent incident where a family member of mine were having a conversation, and I can't really remember what it was. And I was sort of, because I'm on this journey of also really understanding what it means to be neurodivergent, given that I had been recently diagnosed, even if I knew that I had ADHD. So I was there was something silly that I did, right? So I guess you could say like behavior that would be considered neurodivergent. And a family member of mine, they were all trying to figure out, like, is this that ADHD thing? Like that weird thing? Like, is that thing, right? And they just kind of like, look at those that weird behavior that we kind of know. And of course, just asking and just curious, and we're all laughing about it. And I'm like, yes, that is it. And then someone just kind of said, like in the background, just trying not to make it a thing where everything now is ADHD and everything is this and everything, like almost like an excuse for it. And I completely understood that, because I think one of those misconceptions too as well with cultural differences, and I'm only speaking about my own culture, my own upbringing. I know it's different for different people, and some people might relate to this in different cultures. Behavior is typically looked at as excuse. And I remember in the field of family therapy, specifically child mental health, there's a notion where we say, it's not about, like what's wrong with you. So when you're talking about children and what's like disruptive behavior, whatever the child might be going through, it's what happened to you. And that reframe is so, so key, because a lot of times we kind of just go like, what is wrong, as opposed to what happened to you. So I remember it was this person brought it up. I was like, I appreciate you saying that. Like, I appreciate you letting me know, because the truth is, some people, sometimes we live in the identity of what our diagnosis is, or whatever the case might be. But it's not necessarily in a way where we are embracing it in the sense where we're trying to understand it, how we function with it, but also how we function when it's not something that is challenging or causing issues for us as well. So I said, absolutely, I hear you with that, but I need to be aware of my behaviors. I need to be aware of this thing and understand it, and also communicate that for me to be able to function, but also for me to be able to give disclaimers out there as well. Like, oh, no, I am listening. I'm engaged in this conversation. I'm just doing 3 other things at the same time, because that's what helps me keep my focus, so to speak. So I would definitely say that that's one, but I want to also hear from you too as well. Like, what would you say are some other cultural differences and just the way in which it's perceived that you've experienced?
I think in the work with the exposure I've had with different clients from different backgrounds, it's definitely been very fascinating, to say the least, how much people will downplay what they're going through or the mental health issues that they have.
Yep.
Because, again, of the cultural stigmatization, or just the way like they'll be perceived by other people, or just knowing fully well that they cannot communicate that with their family because nobody will understand. So it's it's very tricky kind of navigating that with the client, you know, like people don't, it's like you were saying, it's not that we're saying you should live with this self-fulfilling prophecy that you're depressed and that means the end of the world. It's being aware of it and educating yourself about it and navigating how to cope with it. Right? But I think there's something with a lot of cultures, and I would just speak from being Nigerian, you know, people don't want to hear that you're depressed. Oh my God, you know, I think it's just now that I would say the Gen Zs are being more open and, you know, being honest about their diagnosis or just mental health in general, period, you know, and communicating that. And people are somehow starting to be open to it. But back in the day, nobody cared if you were depressed. You still have to get your work done. Nobody cared if you've been through trauma or if you experienced some form of sexual or domestic assault. Like, people are like, well, yeah, me too. My dad died yesterday and I'm now at work today.
Me too is the favorite word.
Me too. And I think it's very sad to see that it becomes this cycle of unhealthy competition where people are like, well, if I've been through it, you can go through it too. But it's like, that's the thing about human beings. We're all different. We could all go through the exact same thing and still cope with it differently. But nobody wants to have that conversation because it also goes back to just that sitting with that uncomfortability of having that conversation / helping that person figure it out. Nobody wants to, you know, oh, so what does that mean for you? Or how is that presented for you? Everyone's just like, well, don't worry. My auntie died last year too. We kept him moving. Oh, even 2 days ago, my baby, like, it's just like, what is going on? Like, it's not a competition for who's struggling the most.
Absolutely. And in listening to you, I want us to also recognize that the stigmatization and unfortunate just lack of awareness and education also comes with lack of resources and accessibility too. So when we have conversations like this, it's not having conversations of just pointing the finger at the people who have that, who haven't really gotten to that level of just self-awareness, but also awareness that these are things that we all deal with as human beings. Because unfortunately, there is disparity in resources in the world that we live in. And
especially related to mental health.
Yeah. And because of that, unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily know that their mental health matters. So I hate to say it, but therapy is a privilege.
It is.
It is a privilege because there's a lot of people that would even say, they charge me this for therapy and that is how much I make in a month. Of course, you're not going to prioritize speaking to someone, which is one of the reasons why, of course, we have things like this, like the podcast where we're creating awareness and education and trying to reach people that maybe could not be reached on a normal day if we were only speaking and advocating for therapy. But we're still in recognizing that we're still letting people know that if there is accessibility, if there is the resources that are available to you, and there's a lot more, even more affordable and free resources that are out there, whether it's even social media. And of course, we need to be a lot more cautious and boundaried with what we're consuming. But there's a lot of very helpful evidence-based accounts that are out there too as well that can really help some people figure out and navigate through their mental health. But I just felt like it's important to also mention that because a common theme questions that people always ask when we bring up mental health and therapy too is, but can I afford it?
It is a privilege.
Fair enough. Let's be real. Fair enough.
Fair enough. It is. And it's so sad to see, like, I mean, healthcare in general is a privilege in itself. It's just sad that these things that can help us function in the best way possible there's a lot of limited resources to them. It's kind of sad because these things should be prioritized and be free, heavy on free.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Aisha, what would you say? The ball in my court? If you
again,
if you were to give us like a takeaway or a golden nugget from our conversation today, what do you want to highlight for those that are listening when we're talking about the importance of mental health and therapy?
I would just say, like, don't think that you have to be going through the worst case possible thing to seek therapy or to think that you need professional help. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about therapy in terms of people thinking, well, it's not the worst case possible thing yet, so I think I could still figure it out. The whole point of therapy is, working with someone to help you with a professional point of view, help you navigate, understand what you're going through, navigate through it. And I know a lot of people have ways of coping, but what we do learn from our clients is the way you're coping can also be a symptom of what you're presenting with. So it may not necessarily be a healthy coping mechanism. So even if it's just to have the therapist once a month where you're just telling them about like how life is going or like what you want to work on, what are some goals, like someone to keep you accountable. And if you can't afford it, because like we're saying, it is a privilege, please just go for it. It's not the worst thing in the world to start from somewhere. Like you don't have to seek help. Like it's just like when you have a headache or like a back pain, you're not going to go until it's like sometimes people do, but hopefully not. Like you're not going to wait until the pain is like excruciating and you can't move again or you're like banging, someone has to carry you before you go to the hospital, right? So just seek professional help, even if it's not the worst case possible scenario. Just as this is my monthly checkup with this professional for this month. Yeah. What about you, Paula?
I don't even think there's anything else to say.
Oh.
Like you hit the nail on the head, because we really need to normalize therapy not just being about having any sort of severe mental health issue, but just having someone that's helping you navigate your life better, because we all can navigate our lives better. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has the manual or the recipe, but if there is someone that is sort of holding you accountable, whether weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, every other month, it really doesn't even matter. Whatever it is that it's accessible and affordable for you, if you have those resources, please use them. Absolutely. What is happening in our next episode? Please let us know, Aisha.
Well, what is happening? ? You guys have to wait to find out.
I would probably say that if the next episode is as good as this episode, then we're going to be diving into some very serious conversations, but also very insightful conversations too as well.
I'm excited.
Just us, you do not want to miss it.
You don't. No, seriously. You don't. I'm just saying.
You don't.
You don't.
Okay, all right. We would love to hear from you. So please feel free to reach us on all our social media platforms. We have the DWHYA. Did I get that right?
Podcast.
DWHYA podcast on Instagram.
And info@DWHYA.
I'm the one that confused you.
Yeah, you confused me.
Okay, on the serious note.
info@DWHYApodcast.com. Yeah.
Yes.
I got confused, but I got it.
We got this. Anyway, we can't wait to grab your attention in the next episode.
Thank you for listening.
Until then,
see you next time.